A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional. Hello and welcome back to Baby Steps. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Dr. Naomi Bernstein.
And today we are joined by Maria Del Russo, Betches' very own Senior Director of Branded Content. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know you have a Substack where you share a lot, but I'm excited to I keep saying excited. It's always the wrong word.
Right.
I'm,
looking forward
to getting into the real details here on the show because I think your story will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having the conversation and being here.
Why don't we start? Just tell us when you first thought about having kids. Take us to the beginning of your whole thought around parenthood.
I kind of always knew I wanted to have kids. It was actually funny. I ended a relationship before I met my husband because we had, differing views on whether or not we would start a family. That was kind of the final nail in the coffin. It was something that was really important to me, but I was very career focused early on in my 20s. I'm 35 now. And so I ended that relationship around 31 and I met my husband around the time I was turning 32. And we knew right away that we wanted to have kids, that, we wanted to get together. We moved in together after 5 months. It was something that was kind of always on the table. But I was always very anxious about it happening too soon. I don't know why, looking back on that now with everything that's
always
going
goes
on.
that way.
It always goes that way.
Yeah.
I think that I spent my whole 20s being very afraid of getting unexpectedly pregnant. I was single for a really long time. I was a sex and relationships writer. I had a dating column. I was kind of in the mix there. And so a pregnancy would have really derailed that. And even after we got married, I was I kind of want us to just wait 6 months before we really start trying.
When did you get married?
We got married in June of last year. So we've been married for a little over a year now. Okay. So we kind of said, we had our honeymoon that we delayed a little bit. We were going to Paris between Christmas and New Year's. And I was I want to enjoy our time as a married couple. Let's wait. So we said we could start trying in Paris, romantic, to get it going. And it didn't happen the first month, which, is normal, I guess. And which surprisingly, I kind of thought that I would get pregnant very quickly,
Right.
I've written about this in the past, but I feel especially as, a young woman, I was raised Catholic, sex is it's drilled into your mind that that Mean Girls thing of don't have sex because you will get pregnant and die.
Right.
That is, and so I was obviously the second we start, it's just going to happen. I had also had multiple friends who were of, advanced maternal age who got pregnant fairly quickly.
Right. Well, I feel it's the kind of thing where it's they say there's a 15% chance on any given month, but I feel people either get pregnant the first month or it takes them forever.
Yeah.
It's never the average of 3 months or whatever. It doesn't seem like it's that.
No.
It seems it's immediately or never.
It's I related it in a newsletter to kind of how they talk about dating apps too. It's you either join Tinder and meet someone immediately or you're on Tinder for years before you actually meet someone. And I feel getting pregnant is very much the same way.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And so, we were trying, and after we got back from France, I noticed that my cycles were a little irregular, but I didn't really think too much about it because, we were newly married. We were looking for a house. There was a lot of stress going on. And I've had variable cycles in the past.
And were you on birth control before you started trying? No.
So
Okay.
I've had issues with birth control my whole life. I actually had not been on birth control for 2 years.
Okay.
And before that, I was on the mini pill. I get migraine with aura. So estrogen, anything of that type of stuff, it was never going to be I couldn't take that type of medication.
Okay, so it wasn't like you were just seeing your cycles.
No.
Yeah.
Like I had been off birth control.
But did you have regular cycles before?
Yeah,
this
for the
period?
most part, they were
And you were
usually on the
keeping
shorter
track
side. I was
because
keeping
of
track
that,
of them
right.
because I was so afraid of getting
Yeah.
pregnant unexpectedly
Right.
that I was tracking my cycles pretty frequently. And like something in my head one month was like, maybe you should go to the doctor. Like it was just kind of like I felt it in my gut that, you know, we're trying to get pregnant. Maybe I should just get my hormones tested.
And how many months in after trying?
Probably only like 2.
Okay.
I want to
Yeah.
say. Like we got back from France like early January, and I went into my OB in like early February, so like a month.
And
you know,
you
and
were
a half.
timing it. Like
I was
were,
timing it. Yeah,
Right.
I had the pregnancy tracking or the period tracking apps on my
Yeah,
phone
of
and
course.
everything.
They'll get it.
And I went into my doctor, and blood test, the like transvaginal ultrasound, whole 9, and the result, I was actually here in the office when I got the results back, that my FSH was high, which is the follicle stimulating hormone, which I know this now because I've been going through all of this. That's the hormone that, your body, your brain kind of sends to start stimulating your ovaries to like start producing follicles that will produce an egg and all that stuff. It was high.
And what does that mean when it's high?
Basically, what they were saying is that it could point to inactivity in my ovaries. It's kind of like the baseline of that hormone was not stimulating my ovaries to produce enough follicles, and my body registered that, so it was like sending more than it needed to in order to try and like jumpstart my ovaries.
I
see.
Basically, it's
Okay.
kind of like trying to like start a car engine and you're really, really revving it because the engine's not
I
turning
see.
over.
Right. So it's like
that's-
trying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like my body was really trying to kind of do that. So
And is it supposed to be like in a medium range or it's supposed to be low?
it's supposed to be low,
Low,
actually.
okay.
So if I remember correctly, the range for someone who's about my age was supposed to be around like 2 to 10, and mine was 28 when I did my Googling, which I would recommend nobody do, was like premenopausal. And so my doctor was like, I recommend you go to an RE, a reproductive endocrinologist, and it took me like a month to be able to get an appointment, which was like the longest month of my entire life.
And this level doesn't fluctuate. It's supposed to stay this.
does.
Did they retest you at any point? or-
Yeah, so it actually like fluctuates throughout your cycle. So, and I've actually successfully through like things that I've done been able to lower my FSH over time. But it does go up and down from cycle to cycle. When I went into the RE, he said, before even like taking a look at anything, he's like, it sounds like you have premature ovarian insufficiency, which they also call premature ovarian failure, which is basically like your ovaries it's not premenopause, but it's your ovaries are not behaving the way that they're supposed to for your age, which was like a devastating diagnosis. I really never thought that, this would be the scenario that I found myself in. Like I said, I was a sex and relationships writer before I got into branded content, and through all of that, when I was a freelancer, I reported a lot on pregnancy. I would, I worked for medical companies and did like that type of writing and stuff like that. So I knew a lot about female reproduction. I like more than most people likely would. And this was the first time I had ever heard of this.
Right.
Which was incredibly disempowering.
And what are they telling you that this means for you, being able to conceive?
They said what it basically meant is because I was producing lower follicle numbers, I think that you're supposed to produce like around a dozen follicles every month, and I was only producing like 1 to 2. It actually turned out, I would later find through, ultrasounds that my left ovary was not producing any follicles. I actually have what Miranda had in Sex and the City when she has a lazy ovary. I literally had a lazy ovary. Hers was the right though. Mine was the left. And so it just wasn't producing an egg. I was still ovulating every month. Like I'm luckily still getting a period every month, which my doctor has said ups my chances quite, a bit. But because I'm not producing that many follicles, because I also got my AMH, which is your egg count number back, and it was low. It was 0.06. And they basically were like, conceiving on your own, might be more difficult. And I remember he said, you know, you might want to explore donor eggs, and that I like blacked out when he said that to me. You know, I was just like, I like lost my mind. I could not, you know, and I
You're like, Miranda had a baby.
Yeah, I was like, she had a baby and he had one ball. And like, they, you know, I should be able to work something out here.
Right. Yeah. That's a hard.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the times they're like throwing out these things just like kind of like, and here's another option. You're like, oh my God, I'm like at that point.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It was just like bang, bang, bang. Like it was just all hitting me so quickly. And a funny thing I've written about was they took me into the office to have the my husband was with me, thank God, to have the conversation with the doctor, and then they took me into the room to take my vitals, and my blood pressure was like crazy through the roof. And they were like, we can't let you leave until your blood pressure comes down. And I was like, you've just told me
maybe do this first.
I know. Before maybe we should do this first before you tell me the worst news I could have heard today. Because I don't know if you've dealt with, I walked in there not expecting any bad news. I thought that he was going to look at my chart and be like, what are you doing here? You've not been trying that long. Like, come see me in 6 months.
Like, you just want the medical assurance that it's fine. It's in your head and you're overanalyzing.
But that was not what happened. Right. So, you know, that kind of started us on our journey of, you know, cycle tracking. Because my FSH is so high, IVF is not something that's really available to us. It's not that we can't do it. It's just that the outcomes are not that much higher than just tracking my cycle normally.
Like, as in they won't be able to get as many eggs if you were to do an egg retrieval.
Yeah, because the way that IVF works in layman's terms is they basically, the medicine that they inject you with raises that FSH level. And since mine's already so high, they probably can't stimulate it much higher. Which means that if I'm only producing 2 follicles with a high FSH count, like there's not a chance that they can like raise it much higher and get more follicles out of there.
See.
So,
well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Let's say you're still producing from your left. I forget which one.
From my right.
You're right from your right, like two eggs a month.
Yeah.
Don't they only drop really 1 egg anyway?
Yeah.
Like, why does it matter? I don't really understand why it matters if you have more eggs in there to drop, if only one's going to drop anyway.
That's kind of been my whole thing too. And I have recently moved. So I am like getting second opinions from new doctors and stuff like that. I'm kind of in that transitionary phase right now. I think that what their whole thing is like, IVF is a lot of money. You know, we may get you to the point where like you're coming in here and you're spending all this money to only drop 2 eggs that, you know this about IVF, that it's like they may extract 2 eggs from me, but the chances that those eggs are actually viable, that they get to the embryo stage, like we could go through all of this not to have anything at the end of it.
More for like when you're trying normally.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why does it, like, are you still ovulating from the left?
I'm still ovulating from the right. And actually, for the past 2 months, I have ovulated from my left. I've gotten that baby back online somehow.
Oh, how do they know?
They can tell when they're doing the ultrasound. They can see where the follicles are developing. They can see, like, the eggs. Yeah, they're able to, like, they give you like a guided tour of your uterus, and they're like, here's your right ovary and here's your left. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when they're telling you you're not ovulating from the left, like it could just be like that 1 month.
Yeah, it was just like taking an extended vacation. It looks like that ovary. I don't know if it was stress related or what, but they still qualify me as having this POI because I'm just under producing follicles at this point. Some of that does have to do with the fact that I am 35, you know. That type of stuff starts to slow down. I also do have like a very low egg reserve. Although my acupuncturist has said like that it can fluctuate that, you know, so.
And it doesn't tell you about the quality of those eggs that are there. It just tells you like the amount compared to other people your age, but like those could be just as good, if not better than other people your age.
And that's really become my focus is like, how do we get like the freshest, best quality eggs out of here? Like that's, you know, since that's really the only thing I can, if you can control it, you know, there's jury's still out. Some people say you can, some people say you can't, but I, you know, am trying to do everything I can to get the freshest eggs.
So how many months total now haven't done anything other than just trying?
Last month I was able to take Clomid for the first time, which is like, it's kind of, it like basically gets you to super ovulate. It's a similar medicine to what you would take if you were doing IVF, except it's only, it's a pill and then you take one trigger shot to ovulate. That was because my FSH was 10 for the first time since I started this whole process, which I credit to like a lot of different factors. And so that's like the only intervention that I have taken so far. My husband and I are kind of in like a weird off month right now because we are changing doctors right now. So like I'm kind of in like a free-for-all month. It's the first non-tracked cycle I've had for 6 months at this point. To answer your question, it's been about 6 months, 7 months that we've been doing this. But the Clomid thing was a trip. We were talking about this before we started recording, but like I've not been on birth control. Like, hormones have never been a good thing for me, and I went like absolutely nutty cuckoo bananas on Clomid. I think that they call them the Clomid crazies because the amount of hormones that you're putting into your body, you just go like absolutely nuts.
Which is what, just like sensitive, emotional.
I felt like incredibly depressed. Like I was really down, and like it's a weird feeling because like you're like, this is synthetic. I'm aware of the fact that like I have hormones in my body and this is like driving me insane, but like the feeling is still very real.
Yes.
Right.
And so trying to weigh that and trying to be very kind to myself during that time was like incredibly difficult because I'm like, nothing is actually different or wrong right now, but it feels horrible. And trying to explain that to my husband too, who like is just trying to make things better and, feels so powerless in all of this. He has
besides just being down to do it when you tell him to.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm like, you ready? Like,
So how long were you having that depressive feeling?
It probably lasted about 5 days, I would say, in like varying degrees. I would say the like peak of it was probably about 48 hours where I was just feeling super down. Luckily, it was over the weekend, so I was just like able to sit in bed and, watch reruns.
It actually is interesting, like to take that experience through your life to kind of, when you have that type of feeling, depression, whether it is with your cycle or, we all get kind of just a funk, to be able to separate, like you literally had like, this is a synthetic thing that is causing this, but it feels real. So I do wonder if that can help you going forward when your thoughts, I'm sure there were thoughts, like negative future, hopelessness, that kind of thing, especially because you're going through all of this.
Yeah.
To be able to kind of be like, this is not me.
Yeah.
This voice in my head is not really me. This is like coming from this hormone physiological thing. Even if it happens again and it's not because of Clomid, if it's just because of your cycle or because of just whatever, the moon, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
To be able to separate a little.
Totally. And it's funny that you say that because part of all of this, I've really gotten like super woo-woo while trying to deal with this since, medical intervention is not really something we're exploring right now. I've been working with an energy healer and I had a call with her over, I think it was like 3 days ago. And she literally said the same thing. She's like, it is your mind. She's like, you need to get out of your mind and you need to remember that like, it's all just like, that's not reality. She's like, you need to like go outside and touch a tree and like, and like hug your husband or do something like that because you just get so caught up here that it, that starts to affect your physical reality. Right. And you need to kind of learn to separate those two things. So like, I agree with you 100%. Yeah. It's definitely something that I've been trying to work with.
And I want to get into the energy healer in a second. So you take the Clomid and then I'm assuming it didn't work?
No, it didn't work. Okay. I didn't like super duper. I was expecting to go in there and him be like, you were ovulating 5 eggs this month. And I only got 2, which is better than 1. So I was happy with that. And it didn't work, which is when we kind of had the conversation around egg quality. And that's when my focus really became like.
Even just from egg quality after just 1 cycle didn't work?
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll probably take Clomid again, especially if my new doctor is like, you've done this once, your FSH is in a good place. Like, let's try it again.
Right.
I think that the confusion with him and the confusion with me is like, I've ovulated every cycle. Right. Like I've had regular cycles, but I haven't gotten pregnant. And so he's, my former doctor was, like, I think it probably has more to do with egg quality than anything. Or maybe it's just like a fluke. We've gotten all your hormone levels down. Like, maybe we'll be able to kind of get you to a good point. And I want to be clear that, like, the only reason I'm not going to him anymore is, like, proximity to care. It has nothing to do with him as a doctor. He was wonderful. It's just, I'm in New Jersey now, and I can't be going into New York for these appointments.
Yeah. So this might be too much of a medical question, but it's kind of along the lines of what you're saying. If you're taking the Clomid, you're getting more eggs, is the idea that then the best egg is the one that drops down? Like
I think that the idea is that, people with POI, premature ovarian insufficiency, since our FSH levels are so high, will, have a tendency to ovulate more than one egg in a month. And I think it's just, if you have not great egg quality, you may have you may get one that's not great and one that's a little bit better. You know what I mean? So it's like you're kind of upping your odds. The Clomid was supposed to do that as well, as if you're releasing multiple eggs into your body, like the chances of there being one that's actually good enough is higher.
Okay.
Instead of just getting the one.
2 is like max, or do you?
A 2 has been max for me so far. I don't I'm sure you might be able to ovulate more. Like I said, I've heard of people, he actually said that people with POI have a higher tendency of having twins because of this, which would be very cool because then I could be done after this one. I'm not sure what the max is, but for me, it's been 2.
Yeah. How are you thinking about then, like, do you have a plan for in like how long you're going to try interventions, like what you're, or are you kind of just like taking it month by month?
It's funny. We just kind of had this, my husband and I had this conversation after our most recent conversation with our doctor, because he was kind of like, if you want to try IVF, I recommend trying sooner. And I just don't know that I'm ready for it yet. Like, I'm kind of taking it in 6-month chunks. I'm like, okay, we've been trying this for 6 months. I was able to get my FSH down. Now let's see how it goes for like another 3 to 6 months, and we'll kind of go from there. I think that my biggest fear with POI is that I may go into early menopause because my ovaries are starting to slow down earlier than other people my age. Okay. But I'm not there yet. I think that what would really be like an instigating moment for me, or like, a real catalyst moment for me, would be if I like fully skipped a period, if I fully skipped a cycle, which I have not. Like, that is like my red light moment for me. But we've talked about IVF, I don't know that donor egg is the direction that I wouldn't want to necessarily go down. I have like so much respect for women who do that and who have the like selflessness to be able to do that. I'm like pro having a family in whatever way that makes sense to people. I just don't know if that's something that is correct for my husband and I.
Right.
We've talked about adoption. We've talked about, all like anything else that may be able to go to help us out. IUI is another thing that we've talked about. But again, the odds of that over just natural cycle monitoring is not that much higher. So we're kind of in like a weird, I wish that there was like someone could say to me, like, this is guaranteed to give you like 10% more of a chance.
Right.
And all of my percentages are like, okay, you may have like a 2% chance of a better outcome. And I'm like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
Then, you know?
Well, I think it speaks to your husband and your communication that you even had this conversation, like about, because I think that's such an important conversation in the fertility space to have with your partner is like, okay, like how far are we willing to go? And like, what are we open to and what are we not open to? And a lot of those times, those conversations are like really hard, especially if you're on a different page.
Totally.
Or, if someone, and it's hard also, I think, probably for a lot of men in like heterosexual relationships because they might have ideas about what they want to do, but it's not their body. They're not physically going through it. So like, it's kind of like you get a say, but like, it doesn't weigh quite as much as mine. And I think that like to align on those things early on is like really probably makes both people feel better and like, okay, we're on the same page. This is what we're willing to do. This is what we're not willing to do. This is how much we're willing to put into it. So like, how is having that, was you used to conversations like that?
Yeah,
or like,
I mean, he and I have been in and out of couples therapy for like a good chunk of our relationship. It's something that I believe very deeply in. I'm like, give me a neutral space to have difficult conversations. You know, we're
Right.
both adults. Like, let's just do this. And I really do credit that to kind of us being able to have these difficult conversations. Because I think we both go into them knowing that we're not looking to hurt the other person or, you know, instigate the other person in any kind of way, trigger them in any kind of way. It's mostly just like, we need to have this chat. The donor egg conversation was difficult because he was more open to it than I was, especially because he went in for testing and his analysis came back fine, you know, and
Right.
so that, you know, complicated things a little bit because, you know, it was sweet in a weird way. He was like, I wish that I also had an issue so that we could kind of be going through this together. And that is like a heavy burden that I have to carry, is the fact that it's like, when in my darkest moments, I'm like, it's my body that is failing us.
Right.
When he brought that up, I was really upset with him at first about, you know, how could you want to do this? Like, I can't believe it. And I finally had to like take a step back and be like, okay, like look at things from his perspective and then also try and show him what my perspective was. And I was like, let's just say the shoe was on the other foot and like your analysis is the one that came back to have an issue and mine was fine. Would you be open to like donor sperm?
Right.
And he, you know, was like, I actually don't think that I would want to do that. And I'm like, yeah, you know, like, I
Right.
get it. Like, you know, part of me is like, I wish I was selfless enough to be like, I would be able to be perfectly fine if, you know, there was a child that we raised that was yours, you know, genetically, but not mine genetically. And like, you know, I would carry it and all that stuff. Like, it's so complicated, that whole conversation.
Right.
And, you know, again, I'm like open. Like, I think that people who do that, it's wonderful. I know women who have had children with donor eggs and it's a beautiful thing to do. But we both were kind of like, okay, we're either like in this 100% together or we will explore adoption. We'll explore other avenues. We've even had conversations around like, if we get to a point, like, do we even have kids? Do we just
Right.
kind of, you know?
And that's, I think, an ultimate question
Yeah.
for anyone. It's like, again, in terms of like, how much are we willing to do? How
Yeah.
many years of our life are we willing to devote to this? How much like, you know, emotional, physical are we like? And I think like, I think, you know, when you go into it at first, you're like, oh, of course, like whatever it takes. Like,
Yeah.
forever. Like I'll try
Of
I'll try
course.
forever. Right. But then like once you're like fully in it, it does feel like, you're kind of like, how much of my life am I going to put in this?
I think that is like a word that gets thrown around a lot. Like, there's this idea that, you know, in order to be a family, you need to have a child. And like, that's something that I've really tried
Right.
to unlearn myself, because I think that is the way that I've always considered family. And like, my husband Ben and I are a family,
Yes.
even though there's not a child there yet. And there may never be a child. I hope that there is. I believe in my heart that it will be at the end of all of this. But if there isn't, what will that life look like?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's hard to kind of see the life that you thought that you would have flash before your eyes when you're making that call.
or even letting yourself go there, I think
Exactly.
is like kind of a scary thing to do.
Totally.
Like, at all. Like I've had those moments where I'm like, I think the first time someone mentioned that, like, what would that be like? I
Yeah.
think you're kind of like, well, why would you even say that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Why are you
then-
speaking it into existence?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And like, I don't even want to like think about what that would be, because that's like so far from like any outcome that I want. But
Totally.
like, I have had those thoughts where it's like almost like if you, and I remember my therapist being like, it's like kind of limiting for you to like not even be able to imagine a world where people could be happy without kids.
Yeah.
Like many people are happy without
Of
kids and they don't
course.
even want them.
Yeah. People actively make the choice not to have children. It's
Right.
not like a fate that is thrust upon them. Like
Right.
I have a dear friend. I love her. She wants to get married. She wants to like do the whole wedding thing. She's like, I do not want, like, children are just not part of my life. That's not a thing that I want. And I have full respect for people who make that choice.
So
And
what does that look like when you go there in your head? Like if you go there for a minute or 5 minutes of like, can you share what that inner dialogue looks like if you do go there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like, like I think of like us traveling, and I think of us like, you know, doing all these things together. I'm very lucky. I say all the time that I have a wonderful husband who I can't imagine doing any of this with anybody but him. And And we do have a great relationship, just the two of us. And when I think about it, I'm like, it's what I know right now, because we don't have children and we're, you know, old, we're dinks. We're like double income, no kids, and we're able to like travel, and we just moved into this beautiful home and putting that together. And so like, I know that there is richness there. It does make me sad, but it also, I've been trying to think of it less of, when I first started thinking of that life, there felt like there was something missing. And I've been trying to like think of it and imagine it outside of this idea of lack, and just think of all the things that I could fill that space with, instead of like, if there was no child there, what could we do instead? You know, what could the other adventures be? Because I do think that like a big part of the reason why children have always been appealing to me, and like why having a family has been appealing to me, is just, you know, the ability to do something different with your life. You know, I've been single for a really long time, and then I got married, and like I know what that life looks like. I'm kind of always looking for what the next adventure would be, what the next chapter would be, and that doesn't necessarily need to involve children, I'm realizing.
But it needs to be something.
Yeah. So whether we like, you know, get an apartment in Berlin and split our time between there and here, or, you know, I explore like a side hustle that takes up a big chunk of my time, or, you know, I have an amazing vegetable garden in my new home. You know, there's like a lot of opportunity there, from like a large scale and a small scale.
Yeah. And I talk to people a lot about that. Like, your life is good right now. Like, you're happy, you have a good relationship, but there is always this urge for like the next thing, which it's very hard to talk people out of that, because it's like, I want to feel like excited about the next chapter. So I really do get that. And I guess when you go there, like even just now talking about that, do you feel a little pit in your stomach of like, but no.
I think because I'm not ready to throw in the towel.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so I'm kind of just like, okay, like I'm kind of
I can
like, you
dance
know,
on that, and then I come and then quickly come back.
And it's funny because it feels very similar to when I was single, and all of my friends were like partnering up and getting married and doing all this stuff, and like I was showing up to all their weddings without a +1. Like I felt a deep sense of lack. And I would do a similar thing where I would be like, okay, well, what if I never got married? What would my life look like? And I would kind of play that out.
Right.
As like a coping mechanism, I guess.
Right.
But in the back of my head, I was always like, I know that I can do this on my own if I needed to, if I never met my person. But is that actually what I want? And the unfortunate thing is, like, you know, I guess some people never meet their person. The kid thing feels a little bit more definitive than like the marriage and the dating thing.
Well, it's a whole identity that you form around being a mom.
Totally.
Yeah.
Although you do form identities around being, you know, in a relationship,
in a relationship,
or being married, or being any of those things. So
Totally.
I think there's a lot of similarities, and a lot of like parallels to that feeling. And I think especially for women, as you're thinking of like how you're seeing reaching a certain milestone, like wanting to, you know, obviously like you want a baby for the reason that you want a baby, like you want like it for itself. But I think there's so many other factors that are sort of like ingrained in you from childhood about like what it means to be an adult woman. And part of that is like being married and having a child.
Yeah. I grew up in like a very conservative Italian American family where it's like, that's what women did. You got married, you had babies, and the idea of not having children, it's like, okay, so what do you do then?
Right.
And so like, and I've unlearned a lot of that, thankfully. Like I said, I know that I would have a very rich life if the kid thing never happened, but that's like a deep, you know, societal definite, you know, it's there. It's
every person has a mother. That's how they saw a woman. Woman is mother.
Exactly.
You know?
And it's just like, it's just the expectation. It's really hard to be in especially when you're in a scenario like us where you're like, I want this thing. Yeah. I'm really trying.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying so hard. It's not like I'm actively rejecting this.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying so hard to reach this definition of womanhood that like the world has set forth for me. And I'm just not getting there.
Totally. And I remember walking through like Times Square. I'm like, how are there so many fucking people here. Like, how does this work for so many people?
I know,
Like,
it's worked for so many people. People just like, I think of all the times where I'm like, God, I was so worried about accidentally getting pregnant. I could be so lucky now, you know? Like,
if you're open, I want to go back for a second, because when you were talking about that piece of like you guys choosing, if it gets there, which maybe it won't, choosing adoption over egg donor, I think that's a really personal thing. So if you're not open to talking about it, but I do think it would help some listeners to hear like what the thought process is and the emotions around like having a baby that's genetically one parent versus the other parent, and then deciding let's do neither of us versus one of us.
I don't know. It may be taboo, but I worry about my ability to, and I'm sure I would love a child, like, because I think about it as well, that like if he brought a child from a previous relationship into our relationship, I would love that child unconditionally, you know? But I think that it would just be, I worry that it would be, I'm like afraid that I'm going to get canceled on this podcast.
I know it's so personal.
I'm totally open to talking about it, but I think that a part of me is worried that like there would be some resentment forever.
Yeah, and I think that's completely valid. I mean, I think you see on any fertility post, and that's all I'm fed these days, of anyone who like, you know, has having trouble and is complaining, but there's always like 5 to 10 commenters who are like, why wouldn't you just adopt?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that's like, that feels like a statement you would make, not really understanding a lot of this. And I think it's kind of like, well, why is that like why is that on me to like feel like I need to do this for you? Like, you know, why am I not entitled to like the same thing that everyone else is?
Completely. I like, when we're talking about this, I'm like playing out a scenario in my head where like we have a child with a donor egg and it's being a real brat, and in my head I'm like, this is his fucking kid, you know what I mean? Like, and that's messed up. That's like,
no, I think those are valid thoughts that people think and don't say out loud, and I think that's
or that hard moment where, you know, they make the same face and they look the same and you feel excluded, and like you can't have that thing of, oh, she gets this from you and gets it from me.
I just always worry about being like the odd parent out, you know, and I know that happens naturally with children. They tend to favor one parent over the other as they grow up, but like I worry that there would be some, like, just something always in the back of my head, and maybe it would never happen. Maybe I would be able to do this completely selflessly, and, you know, it would be no drama whatsoever. But I don't know. I just, like, I don't know if that's a risk I'm willing to take. I would rather us go, like, we feel like such equal partners in our relationship that, like, it feels like let's continue to go into parenthood as equal partners, and it feels like there would be an imbalance. In some way.
Almost between you and him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, does the idea that you're both open to adoption, though, also like give you a sense of like, all right, in the like case scenario that none of these other things happen, not that adoption is like such a guarantee, but like it feels like more of a guarantee than anything else. Does that give you a sense of peace, or are you still kind of like, that's still not something I'm like really hoping for, so I'm still kind of really, it doesn't take any of the edge off of any of this other stuff?
I probably hold it at the same level of interest as not having children.
Right.
Okay.
Like, I kind of, you know, I think that we would have to exhaust all of our opportunities, and like, it's not that adoption would be like the absolute next step. Then we would, like, you know, if we went through everything in trying to have a biological child, like, and it didn't work, then we would come to the crossroads of like, okay, so do we adopt or do we not have children?
Right.
Like, I it's not
a given that's like the next step.
Exactly.
Right,
I'm not like, okay, that's like in 2 years, if we're still here, like, we're gonna go through the process of adoption. I'm kind of like, in 2 years, if we're still here, we'll have the conversation about what we want to do.
That's probably a smart way to think about it anyway, because like in 2 years, if you were still here, like your whole thought process might change on like so many levels.
Well, and that's something that I've even become aware of going through this process. I mean, if you had asked me a year ago, like, would you go through IVF if it meant that you know, if you found out that you couldn't have children for whatever reason, would you go through IVF? I would have told you no.
Right.
I would have been like, absolutely not. It's not something I want to do. Like, my body, like, I know how I am on hormones, like, million reasons, right? I wish every day that I could do that and that it would be more of a guarantee now. Like, and it's that flipped so quickly. Like the second that was off the table for me, I was like, I wish I could do that now. And I kick myself for being so definitive about it in the past. You know, I think that what this whole experience has taught me is that like I can't hang on to any one decision. Like I need to be open to the fact that like my feelings are constantly going to be in flux about all of this.
Totally. I think that like there's so much about this where you like look at a former self and you're like, you didn't know what you were talking about.
Yeah, really.
Why
You're
are you
like
thinking that?
fucking idiot. Like
yeah. I mean, I remember thinking like when I would hear other people, like people I didn't really know that well going through this kind of thing. And I would always say, like not in front of them, but I would say to someone else, like, it does feel like with enough time and resources, like everyone like eventually gets there. And now I look at that version of me and I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, really. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
But it does give you a sense of like, again, more compassion, more like, you know, a sense, I think not just for fertility, but for all things in life to just be like, okay, I know less than I think I know. And like, it's hard to fully understand anything unless you've gone through it, which is something I take to so many things that I don't understand.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about your, about the energy healer.
My energy healer.
Because I've been doing is it like a Reiki?
Yeah.
person?
So mine is actually, people are going to think this is crazy. Mine's over the phone.
Okay. Have you never met her?
I've never met her.
Okay. Is this like when you call like a psychic?
No, well, the only reason I'm okay with it is because she was referred by someone who I'm like, I trust implicitly. And she's like, you should work with this woman. Her name's Manuela. She's like, but she's in Mexico, so you have to do it over the phone. And I'm like, really? Is this actually something that? But since I've been working with her, I've been feeling positive changes. So I'm like, it may be complete like snake oil, but it's working for me. So
This is part of what you did, and you said you got your numbers down.
Yeah. So
I wanted to hear more about it. Like, how did that play into it? Because I also think there's like in this sense when you're kind of at this crossroads, there's this sense of like science and then like holistic stuff.
Totally.
And it's hard to, sometimes you're like, it's like, it feels like a spectrum of like, because those two sides like both think the other one's bullshit.
Totally.
I think like every like energy person will be like, doctors don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And doctors will be like, these people are scamming you. So it's very hard, but it's like, I've also kind of been in the place of like, I kind of want to do a little bit of both and they seem so counterintuitive. So like, I'm wondering how you look at that.
For me, I think it's something that I've always kind of like erred towards. Like I read tarot, I have crystals all over my house. So like literally the first thing that I did when I found out about this was I called my mother and I was like, which saint is good for fertility? Can you get me that necklace? And I wear the medal around my neck now, Saint Gerard. And I have my energy beads for fertility here. Like it's just something that like I naturally go towards. Like I said, I read tarot, I'm big into my horoscope, all that stuff. And acupuncture was actually the first thing that I did, which
that one I think is like the
in
intersection.
the center, because that was actually something.
The only one they both allow.
Totally. And that was actually something that my RE recommended. And I was like, oh, I'm already there. Like I was able to book her before I was able to book you. I've been going for 4 months, for 4 weeks. Thank you. But so that was actually first, and like the herbs and everything like that, which kind of got me on the supplement train. I've been taking a ton of supplements. I like, my husband calls them my horse pills because I just like take so many of them. But the energy healer thing feels hand in hand with therapy in a kind of way. Yeah. Like, you know, as much as I've tried to, I'm not a huge meditator. Like I've tried to build a meditation practice into my life in multiple moments of my life, and it's just never really stuck. The way my phone operated energy healer works is she and I will set up a time and she'll text me and she'll be like, I'm starting on you now. And it gives me the opportunity for like an hour to just be very present in my body because I'm supposed to like try and connect with her energetically. I feel like I sound insane.
No judgment.
Right, and I'm supposed to like connect with her, and it really helps me to kind of like get into my body at that point, you know, and to just like take a breath and really focus on myself. And it's the closest thing to meditation that I've been able to keep up. You know, it's just like a mindful.
Seems like a form of meditation.
Totally. It's like a mindful moment for myself.
Yeah. Well, what I think it is, and why I think a lot of these things actually do work, is what we were talking about before, where you're so in your head, you think you can figure out the solution to the problem. Like thinking about it and what doctors and what, even like the supplement, like just a lot of mind chatter. Yeah. And so I think when you come to a place of whether it's faith and church or spirituality, there's almost like a letting go
Yeah.
that happens and quieting the mind of like, I'm going to give this over to something that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And that can be really just bring you the peace that plays into that other piece of like, well, you better not be stressed because if you're stressed, you're not going to get pregnant and you're going to have this.
Totally.
And so like, you better relax. And it's like, okay, I better relax. And how do I relax? And
Yeah.
so sometimes just like giving it up to God or energy or
Universe.
a healer
The universe,
or whatever,
yeah.
whatever it is, it just like trust
Completely.
is important because otherwise you think you're in charge.
Yeah.
And you're not.
And that's the thing. She literally in our last session was like, you're trying so hard. She's like, you're trying so hard to have a baby right now. It's just like, you're sweating it and you're working. And she's like, if you believe that this is like a spirit that's supposed to come into your life, where does it have the room to do that? If you're just like, you're gripping, you need to just like let go and just kind of like put your faith into the universe. And that's kind of where I've been trying to think more recently.
And it sounds like, I mean, is that, you think, you said your numbers have gotten better and
Yeah.
like you're ovulating from the other side
Yeah.
now. Like, what do you credit that to?
I really do feel I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to like just let things roll off my back a little bit more, like definitely more successful in some moments than others. Like I definitely do get stressed sometimes, especially like moving has been crazy, but I do also credit the, like I moved out of Brooklyn to the country and like having a little bit more breathing room, having a little bit more space, getting into nature. Like I've really been trying to slow down. Something my therapist, not my energy healer, my therapist, one of my battery of women who's trying to get me pregnant
Team,
right
yeah.
now. She said, my therapist said to me, she's like, you need to start acting like you're pregnant now. She's like, you're not pregnant yet, but if you want to try and create a energy around you to bring that in, she's like, you need to start being selfish and kind of prioritizing yourself. And like, when you're pregnant, you're kind of given the ability to do that a little bit more.
Right.
Because, you know, you have an excuse, you know, us as women, we're not really allowed to kind of put ourselves first in a lot of ways and, you know, be selfish and selfishly like say no to, you know, hanging out with people or I can't like, you know, I can't stay late and do this thing. Like I need to focus on myself or, you know, even something as little as like my husband wanting to go for a walk and me just wanting to sit on the couch by myself for 20 minutes while he does that. And so I've been trying to really like take that in and use this moment in my life. Like I always try and look for lessons in the difficult parts of my life. Like it's really the only way I can cope. And whether or not a baby comes out of this, like I think that this is a very important moment in my life to kind of remind myself to put myself first, which is tough. And it's not something that's easy to do once you have a child. And so, you know, if I do believe that like your children come into your life to teach you something, like I like to think that maybe my eventual child is teaching me to kind of prioritize myself, and I need to learn that karmic lesson before they enter my life.
Yes.
To mother yourself.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Mother myself, take care of myself before I can take care of
Yes.
my
And when you talked about the identity of a mother and
Yeah.
like that's important to be able to maintain your own self-care, your own
Totally.
identity when it happens for you, which
Yeah.
if you want it to,
Totally.
it will.
To close out the episode, let's take a moment to recharge with a segment sponsored by First Response. Every moment of the fertility journey is different for everyone, and we all handle waiting for that positive test in our own way. No matter what you're struggling with on your journey to conceive, our friends at First Response want to help you find some positive in the negative, whatever that looks like for you. So I wanted to ask you, you know, thank you so much for sharing your story. Is there anything that you felt like for the listeners who are listening, who feel like they're in like a similar spot, who are going through it, anything that you feel like has helped you kind of like stay positive or just get through to the other side?
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think-
you can hang in there longer.
I think that, yeah.
in a long, in like, in a,
Hang
even,
for
you
the
know,
long
in
haul.
your tougher moments.
Yeah, I've really, you know, been very open about my experience. Like I've written about it in my newsletter. I've talked to friends about it. Like I've let people know when things are hard. I think that has been really healing for me in a lot of ways. You know, even though this is something that a lot of women go through and, you know, it's great that there are podcasts like this where we can kind of talk about it and find community and do all that stuff. On the day-to-day, you know, none of my friends went through this. I had to kind of search for community outside of my typical friend group. I think just being incredibly like open about it has been the thing that's been most positive for me. Like, this isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something that many women go through. It's incredibly difficult. And I think being able to kind of say, like, I'm having a really hard day. You know, I went through a situation with a friend of mine. She lost her father, and I really wanted to be there for her, but she was staying with her sister who has a new baby, and I had gotten some bad fertility news around that time, and it was so difficult to have to say to her, like, I want to be there for you, but I can't be there for you physically because this is something that is incredibly triggering for me. And she understood. And I was so, in the past, I would have never been open about
Made
that.
up an excuse.
Or I would have just swallowed it and gone there, you know,
Right.
and like put myself in harm's way in order to feel like I wasn't being a bad friend. I think that just kind of being able to say, I'm really hurting right now and this is what I need, is kind of the strongest, most comforting thing that you can do. And, you know, people don't know how to help you unless you let them know. Especially people who haven't gone through this before. So just like really honoring yourself and not being afraid to talk about it, I think is the most important thing.
Interesting that the way to stay positive is by like acknowledging the negative,
Yeah.
you know, and like speaking it out loud. And
yeah, I said, you know, my father said to me one time, like, you know, we were on vacation and he heard me crying because we got a negative pregnancy test. And he was like, I hate hearing you cry. And I was like, yeah, I understand that. But like, I have to cry because if I try and hold the sadness to the side, it just prolongs it. Like if I just get that feeling out, then I'm able to like work through it and then move on. You know, I can't just sit in the negative. I need to like express it. And that gives me the freedom and the space to kind of move on from it. And I'm going to feel it again. I know I'm going to feel it again.
Right.
So I may as well feel it now.
Right.
And it stops you from then creating more negativity in your life if you're like getting resentful and now you're kind of like passive aggressive with this friend.
Completely.
And now you're adding like interpersonal conflict on top of what you're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That stems from like an avoidance of,
Completely
of going there.
Just
right.
like facing things head on. It's the most difficult thing in the world, but it's also the most like cathartic thing here.
So thank you again to First Response, the pregnancy test brand that is there for you no matter where you are on your journey. When it comes to pregnancy and planning, First Response supports and empowers women along their journeys because every test is more than just a result.
Well, I think that's really great advice. And thank you again so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for keeping us posted along the way. And where can anyone find like your Substack, or if they want to like kind of come with you on this journey, where can they follow you?
My Substack is called Sunday Sauce because I don't just write about infertility. I also write about food.
So sauce and
babies, you know. So it's sundaysauce.substack.com. And then my Instagram is at Maria Del Russo.
Awesome.
So nice to get to know you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next time on Baby Steps. Thank you.